everybody. This is Karen Matzo here. I'm happy to be with you all today. We are going to talk about positively influencing student behavior through our own behavior. So welcome. I have Heather Jenkins with me also today, who's going to help out for the first half, just to make sure that our technology is going strong. Okay. So a little bit about the session. Like I said, it's an interactive session, hopefully as much as possible. And I'm going to encourage you, let's see, somebody already put something in the chat. Hi, Lindsay Sullivan from Dover, New Hampshire. Happy to see you. If everybody else wants to write in too, that would be great. It's way more fun that way. Whoops. So it's interactive. Use everything you got. I don't think I can see the emojis, I'm realizing, because I can't see your faces, which is sad. But following this, just so you know, if you did register and if you're here, you'll get a link with your PD certificate, the slide deck, other documents, and a link from the video, the recording. Okay. And at the end, I'm going to ask you all to stay on. It'll be about a minute and a half. There's going to be a survey that comes on. All right. So, and I'm just going to go up to the chat and if I can find my cursor. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Let's see who else is here. I see April and Sarah and Christina and Leanne, Victoria and Laura Kelsey. Hello, Abigail. So hi, everybody. Welcome. All right. This is me. I am the Professional Development Director at Demonstrate Success. And like I said, Heather's here with us. And she is our Director of Math and Assessment Literacy. She's a fabulous human. Maybe some of you have met her in different capacities in New Hampshire. So thanks, Heather, for your help today. I'm the PD director here. We've been doing this for about 7 years now. We started Demonstrate Success, and during the pandemic, we did a lot of fun professional development online for paraprofessionals. And honestly, you guys are more fun than most people. So thanks for showing up today. I am a literacy specialist, RTI director, curriculum and assessment specialist. I do all sorts of good things here. And I try to help this team be the best they can be. I am currently learning the piano, and I have a lesson this afternoon. So that was on my mind when I was making this slide, and I'm doing a lot of reading and hanging out and stuff like that. So today we're going to talk about behavior and how what we do influences student behavior. And then after we talk a little bit about that, we're going to talk about some high level leverage practices that support responding instead of reacting to student behaviors. Okay. So let's first talk about this concept of behavior as communication. And the first thing I'd love for you to do is in the chat, I want you to write a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, or a 5 for how much behavior impacts learning in your school, negatively impacts. So I'm going to open up the chat here. Let's see, I see 5, 5, 4, 5, 5. 5, 4, 4, 4, 5, 5, 4, 5, 4, 4, 4, 4, lots of 4s and 5s. I guess you wouldn't be here, right, if you weren't having a lot of 4 and 5 situations. So I'm happy that you're here. Heather is happy that you're here. I have something here that I'm going to put the link in the chat, and it's called Mentimeter. And this fun thing is going to happen, I hope, where you are going to be able to write about, I'm going to just change this. You're going to go to this link. I'm putting it in the chat, and I want you to write, it's going to ask you for 3 different inputs on some of the behaviors that you're seeing that are having negative impacts on teaching and learning. Okay, so go there. You can pick that up, HTTPS, www, it's right in the chat. Mentimeter. And it's going to look like this. And you are going to put in a word. So hopefully you're seeing that. Heather, are you seeing that well?
Yep.
Terrific. Catherine has a raised hand.
It is tricky to do the raised hand and have folks talk in the webinar format, but you can try, Karen.
Okay, I'm kind of curious. Let's see. Catherine, let's see, Catherine. Catherine, did you want to say something?
You're on mute, so you have to unmute, I think, and then
Or you can also write in a question. And Angela, you too, if you want to mention something, go ahead.
I would love to. I'm clicking on enter a word and nothing, it won't type.
I wonder if anyone else is having that problem. Is anyone else having that problem?
I can.
You know what, Angela, if you want, why don't you just put it into the
Uh,
chat? Or why don't you tell me and I'll try it?
well, a webinar chat box just popped up. Maybe I need to use that and not what's on the screen.
You can put your words in the chat box. You can also tell them to me and I'll type them in.
Let me try first.
Okay. I'm going to put you back on mute. All right.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Let's see if anybody else is. I was able to enter. Okay. I have some words. Okay, Leanne. I'm going to go to the slide. Okay. All right. So hopefully everyone's had a time, a moment. Okay. Whoops-a-daisy. Let's see. Now I'm going to go to see your responses. Let's see. Submit. Oh, I know what's going on. Very disappointing. All right. Okay, here we go. All right, here's what we're seeing. Are you ready? I think people are still putting some in. We have 90 responses. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
All right, so let's see what
Maybe
we have.
just a little bigger.
A little bigger?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a little better?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have blurting out, being silly, boredom, distraction on computers, students on cell phones. The bigger the word, the more people wrote that input. Okay, so I see a lot of disrespectful, talking back, anger, yelling, not listening, hitting, unmotivated. What else is kind of big? Frustration. I would love to hear more about what that looks like. Task avoidance, sometimes that's frustration. Um, rude can be frustration, yelling, anger. Yep. Okay. So it looks a lot like we're dealing with a lot of different behaviors, right? And a lot of common behaviors. So, all right. And I'm also going to read out from the chat. Okay. All right. I'm going to keep going. So it does look like we are definitely seeing a lot of the same behaviors. And I guess one of the things that I want to address is, why do we think the kids are doing these things, right? What's behind the behaviors that we're seeing? And that's a little bit of what we're going to talk about today. All right. So, what I'm trying to put forward to you, and I think probably this is not new information, is that behaviors are actually communication from kids. And if we take ourselves out of it and we start to look at these behaviors through a lens of unmet needs and lagging skills, right? So every time you see a behavior that is bringing you displeasure or that's interrupting learning and teaching, try to think about whether you can put it into a category of unmet needs or lagging skills, right? And then when we talk about unmet needs, if you look farther down on this slide, there is a shortcut. What's the word for that, Heather? A
Acronym?
acronym. Thanks. Heather and I were just talking about retrieval issues as we reach our low 50s. Everybody eats, right? So sometimes an unmet need, a student may be looking for escape. They may be looking for attention. There may be some tangible gain to the behavior, or they perceive there's going to be a tangible gain, or they're looking to fill a sensory need, right? So for the student that's tapping, right, they're not doing it to be annoying. Maybe they're doing it to stay focused. Maybe they're doing it because they're feeling fidgety, because they're feeling anxious, right? So that would be an unmet need. And the tangible gain, right, from the tapping is that it helps them to stay focused. That's why we give kids fidget toys and things like that. All right. So in this, where else we want to, the other piece of this is teaching the skill, right? So I'm going to go on to the next slide. And what I've done is I've taken some of the common misbehaviors and sort of started to categorize them. And if you have comments around my categorizing or questions, please write them in. Okay. When we think about unmet needs, if you have a student that is constantly arriving unprepared, obviously they're not doing it to irritate you. There is an unmet need. Either it's an unmet executive functioning need, or they don't have the materials that they need, or they're unable to complete the work at home for some reason. Wandering the halls, maybe kids have attention issues, they have too much energy, they are avoiding something, right? Refusing to participate or do classwork. Again, they may feel inadequate, they may have insecurities. There's some unmet need, bullying, teasing. They're needing attention. They're needing to act out something else that's happening in their own lives, shutting down, using the cell phone, right? There may be a need for stimulation, a problem that they have with needing additional stimulation. They may actually be feeling insecure about a piece of communication or connection with someone outside of their lives or within the school. Gossiping and drama, leaving the classroom, play fighting, not listening, or being unfocused, or not taking corrections well, right? All of those behaviors that we don't like to see go into that unmet need category. And then if we think about some of the others, such as calling out or saying no to a teacher, being rude, disrespectful, tantrums. So that moves into the category more of potentially, right, skills. So it could be possible that a student, again, has poor self-regulation, right? So they need the skill. They need strategies and skills to improve their self-regulation. They need self-checks, saying no to teacher directions, right? Or being rude or disrespectful. Maybe they need replacement language for what they're trying to communicate. Or they need to be able to apply language to the emotions that they're feeling in the moment, right? Fighting, pushing, hitting, same. They need alternatives, they need skills. Skills that will help them develop alternatives to the behaviors that they are actually doing. Okay, I'm just going to look in the chat now because I'm sure that there's let's see. I work in a classroom with about 16 kids, and we always have interruptions because of how many kids we have, right? So that's interesting. So there's 16 kids, which actually is a fairly small classroom, okay? But maybe there is a need around noise, right? Or a need around smaller groups, a need for silence, some other environmental element in the classroom that can be adjusted, right? I'm going to keep going. Lindsay has raised her hand. I think in a moment I may Lindsay, I'm going to encourage you if you want to say something, have at it.
Yeah, so I'm a para at the high school, and all of our kids in our classroom have a need, whether it's autism or they have a one-on-one, or they're in there because the state has housed them in there because they've already graduated, because they're not of age to age out yet, but they're in that classroom. So we have kids that have outbursts, like that's the kid, like the classroom I was just saying, we have about 16 kids that have sensory needs, or they have an outburst, or the kids from the outside are coming into the classroom and opening the door. So we've had a lot of, we've tried a lot of different things. Our classroom teacher has tried a lot of different things as timers and like breaks and stuff. But it's a challenge on a daily basis, because of how many people we have in the classroom, and how many of the kids have the need, and most of us are one-on-one paras, or some people are working with multiple kids, so it's hard to kind of like have a kid stay in a routine when you're trying to work with like a couple other people. So that's what my question is like, how do you stay in that routine when you have that many kids in the classroom, where there's always somebody going in and out, or somebody gets up and running because they want sensory for, and they're seeking sensory for running, like they want that sensory input, so they're going to run across the classroom. Then you have another kid that's yelling at them not to run across the classroom, and then everything goes like snowball effect. So
Thank you, Lindsay. I would ask that everybody, if you have thoughts around that, definitely write them into the chat and share with Lindsay. I think that later on in the presentation, I'm going to share with you a bunch of strategies to manage some different behaviors, but right off the cuff, I guess I find myself thinking about sensory spaces in the classroom, places where kids can be trained to go instead of running around, like, different spots in the classroom where there's different sensory tools and headphones and anyway, so let's talk more about that, because and we will get to some of those strategies in a little bit. And then Lindsay, also, if you want to stay on, we can also stay on and talk more about the specific situation in your class, because it sounds like you have a lot of high needs kids.
Yeah, we do. A little bit. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. So I think the first thing that the emphasis here today is helping us all to think about what we bring to the student behavior dynamic, right? And this lens of being able to very quickly couch a student's behavior in an unmet skill or a student's unfulfilled need, right? And again, of course, be confident and firm in your approach, right? Be consistent. Kids, they need that. I mean, all people need that. And practice taking that deep breath. And we're going to talk more about responding versus reacting, but truly checking yourself to make sure that you are not responding impulsively or responding to your own emotions in the face of a student's behavior. Okay? It's hard. Now, all throughout this presentation, I encourage you to write in questions. I will definitely look at the chat. I'm going to look at the chat now, make sure that Laura, thank you for writing to Lindsay. Okay. Laura says, can they all focus on a common activity? All right. So let's talk about some of the practices. the first thing that, and these are not direct strategies right now. Some of them will be. I mean, this is a direct strategy, but these are sort of the categories of what we're going to talk about in terms of high leverage practices. So the first thing is about role modeling and this idea that when we walk into the school building all day long, we are modeling all day long because kids are watching you all day long. And your responsibility, right, is to model the expectations of the community. Now, there's the community at large, the school community. So that means the school rules, the community agreements, as well as the classroom agreements. Now, the second one, and that, those differ from school to school, but there's some general ones, right? Things about running and eating and drinking and yelling and voices and physicalness. And of course, we go on to model all of those positive expectations that the community has developed. And the social emotional skills, that's the second one. And that has to do with how we treat other students in the classrooms. Kids are watching all the time, right? They're watching how you treat other students. They're watching for favoritism. They're watching for respect. When we show disrespect towards a student who may be misbehaving or may not know the answers, or they see that and they're cataloging that in their heads, right? And it's a really tall order to constantly be modeling positive social emotional behaviors because it's exhausting. We just, in our natural lives, we have biases, right? We respond to things in certain ways naturally. When we walk into the school setting and kids are watching us, we really need to tamp that down and check ourselves. It also has to do with how we treat our colleagues, our teachers. For instance, something right off the bat, when the teacher's delivering a lesson, kids will be watching you, if it's a direct instruction situation, to gauge the value of what the teacher's saying, right? So if you're attentively listening and you're asking questions and you're not allowing yourself to be interrupted, that's a positive role model, right? For the kids that are sitting in the room, for example. In terms of professional skills, I think that all of this encompasses professional skills. It also has to do, it's relevant to how we problem solve situations in front of kids, how we model a growth mindset, what we do when we make mistakes, what we do when we've said something wrong or made a poor decision, how we mea culpa, how we manage that publicly. And of course, the collaboration and communication I sort of addressed around the social and emotional skills, right? Social emotional is, how we deal with ourselves as well. And collaboration communication is just how we are collaborating, communicating with our colleagues, the adults, the students, and so on. I just want to go to the chat. I feel that some of our kids should be left behind so they are not being centered out from classmates, which causes bad behavior. I think we're going to get back to that. So I love this sentence, be the thermostat, not the thermometer. And you'll see this on some materials that I'm going to share with you later. This means that you set the tone. You're not adapting to the tone that's set, right? The thermometer reflects the degrees in the room. But what you're doing is you're setting the thermostat. You are setting the mood and you are controlling the environment. So check yourself during the day, and I've done this as a parent. You look around, you realize all of a sudden that you're reflecting the chaos of your household in that moment, right? And so be the thermostat, not the thermometer. Set the mood, set the tone. This next line, matching voice and body language to message, it's also another piece of self-awareness, when you speak to kids or you speak to colleagues, is what you're saying being matched with your body language, right? If you're saying something with authority, is your body delivering a message of authority? Is the tone of your voice delivering authority? Or is it potentially unkind in that moment because in your head you're feeling, frustrated? So how much of that is coming out? Or are you asking instead of telling? Right? We want to be very careful. And there's a slide right now where I'm just going to quickly model. So there's a lot of ways, right, that our voice conveys and our bodies convey. We can say, how are you? And that would be a voice of concern versus, how are you? Right? So just a couple models, or it could be, let's go. Right? Kids are online, they're lollygagging, or let's go. Or one more time, right? Or let's try it one more time. Okay. I'm not going to go through the whole list because it's pretty clear, but there's a certain self-awareness that you need to carry all day long. And I would be surprised if your classroom teachers, if you have a great relationship with them, if they wouldn't be happy to get a little feedback from you too on how they're sounding with what they say during the day, but make sure it's good with them first, right? You have to have
Karen, there is something that was put in the Q&A.
Oh, please. Thanks.
Is in line with that says, what if a teacher is the one setting off the child, right? If there's favoritism in the classroom, or if a child picks up on it and is able then to avoid tasks, because they're picking up on that. So just kind of maybe advice or thoughts for that.
So this goes to the collaborative teaching model and sort of the setups that you have in your classrooms. I am very aware of the different hierarchies that happen in classrooms and the range of relationships that paraprofessionals and teachers have. We are going to run, and I'll tell you more about this later, a co-teaching workshop this summer at I think it's the third week of June, and I'll show you later on in a slide, where we're going to give strategies to teachers and paraprofessionals to elevate their working relationship. I will say that it's important that if it's in your capacity to talk with your co-teacher or your classroom teacher about that, then I would sit down one-on-one in a quiet space and think about the way you can open up the conversation with a question, possibly. You can also, if you'd like, encourage your teacher or share with your teacher some of the learning that you did at this session as a neutral way of maybe trying to make him or her aware. Okay, let's just look in the chat. I feel like one-to-one, one step and so many toes. I feel like as a one-on-one, I step on so many toes advocating for my student. That is your job, though, is to advocate for your students. And I don't know if I would think about it as stepping on toes as much as you are ethically obligated to do what you feel is right for your student. And I think that means talking directly to your other colleagues in a gentle way and asking questions around issues that come up. Okay, so I guess I am seeing little. Sarah, I'm sorry you can't see. I'm not quite sure what's going on. I'm thinking everyone else can see my slides. Heather, if you could maybe have a dialogue.
I think it just is, you need to make sure if you're in Zoom that you have everything is as big as it can be, like it's maximized, and that your Zoom screen isn't too small.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're getting everybody's. At the bottom of the screen, there is a Q&A panel. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's move to the next, relationship building. I think, in my opinion, that all paraprofessionals have some of the potential for the strongest relationships with students. And because of that, I feel that as a group, paraprofessionals are some of the most powerful game changers for kids. We're going to talk a lot about, let me just get my timing. Whoa, time goes fast. All right. We all know, everyone on this call knows that positive relationships are essential to motivating kids. Changing kids' behavior is all about trust. It's all about respect. It's all about connection and relationship, right? I mean, I had a kid, my own blood, who couldn't and wouldn't perform for anybody but the teachers that he liked. It was a really, really maladaptive strategy, but it was the truth. And I think that you have the power as paraprofessionals to create really strong relationships. So I am sure that many of you know these. Here are some strategies. When you see students, when they come in, especially the students that are most challenging for you, welcome them by name. Good morning. Ask them questions, express interest, remember what they say. If you have to write it down, write it down. Identify and celebrate every success and strength that you can extract. And it could be the littlest thing. Share an appropriate amount of yourself, hobbies, cute anecdotes about your own family, things that are appropriate that the kids enjoy, TV shows, the stuff that they love. This is a hard one, listening without an agenda. For the kids that you have the most trouble with, see if you can carve out time to listen to them without the agenda of getting them back on task, without the agenda item of having them complete their work, right? See if you can carve out spaces during the day to really make them see that you are hearing them, everything that they want to share with you. Try for more positive than negative interactions. And this last one is, rituals and fun. So handshakes, code words, references, memes that you reference. I often, when I do this work with classroom teachers, I encourage them to build classroom rituals and classroom fun rituals. Like the kids, like your classroom is a fun club to be a part of, right? And as paraprofessionals, you may not have control over that whole aspect, but with individual students, you can really, really build some rituals and some fun things. Okay. I'm just looking at the chat now. And I see Trish wrote, I have amazing results with students once we formed a relationship. Lee writes, I have a wonderful teacher that I work with. I am a parent in the classroom. The teacher and I try to touch base at least once a day. So just go to the chat, folks, and make sure that you read the input from your colleagues because there's some great input there. And Heather, if you wouldn't mind just drawing me to anything that I need to be drawn
Absolutely.
to. Great, thanks. Yep. So this is a great image. Ready? I love this. The piggy bank. So all day long, we are withdrawing from students' piggy banks. We are asking them to sit still. We are asking them to take academic risks. We are asking them to do things they are uncomfortable with. We are asking them not to say those offensive things that are coming into their heads. We are asking them to wait to go to the bathroom. We are asking them to sit under horrific lights. We are asking them to eat within 12 minutes, their lunch, so they get outside to recess. There's all sorts of things that we are doing to them, right? That withdraw from their piggy banks. The balance here is thinking about putting more and more into their relationship piggy bank. You can't draw on that piggy bank unless you've filled it. You have to keep it filled. And the way that we keep it filled, right, is emotional and logistical or strategic. So you build the relationship, you give them positivity, you give them attention and connection and listening and support and encouragement. You give them your time. Maybe you try to arrange to have lunch with them once a month, or the teacher does, and you can distribute these deposits throughout the entire team. Maybe you give them a card, maybe you encourage them to draw you a picture. There's all sorts of things that you can do, right? You let them work on something of choice. You give them choices so that they're able to do something that they're good at. There's all different ways. The concept here is that you need to fill their piggy bank. And just that image keeps you sort of alert to that. And if you wouldn't mind right now, take a moment and just write in the chat some of the different ways that you deposit in some of those students' piggy banks. We would love to see. How do you deposit in your kids' piggy banks? What are some different ways? What's really successful for you? So Amy writes, we take kids for walks. We check in, we refer to music. Oh, Taylor Swift has to help tie their shoe. I could let them tie your shoes. Because sometimes, they love to feel like they have abilities and capacities that they can help you with. That's a really good way to deposit. Play, bring them special snacks. Kristen Collins, we cannot see you. Wear fun earrings. Yes, let them pick them out. Conversations, read. Okay, thanks. So there's a lot of different ways that we deposit in our kids' piggy banks. Okay. The other thing that I want to emphasize is that second bullet. For kids that have behavior issues, a lot of times they also have negative relationships or issues with other students, or they have trouble investing in the school community. So another piece to think about is, how can we help students to connect? And how can we help their piggy banks be filled by other students and teachers and adults? So when you look at the classroom at those 16 or 20 kids, and you see those 3 or 4 kids that are consistently struggling to behave in a way that's appropriate and that's not interrupting teaching and learning, also think about the ways in which you can help them get connected with their peers. Okay? And if you want to write into that, that would be great. Lindsay, did you want to say something?
Yeah. So on that note, we have unified classes. So our students are in the classroom with other students that help them as mentors. And the same thing goes for, we have unified sports through the Special Olympics in Dover as well.
And that's incredible. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
so-
And I would say that if anybody in the classroom, right, and this is something that you're just making me think of, even some of your challenging kids, and I'm sure many of you have tried this before, but I have found like 5th graders that have challenging behaviors. Sometimes a way to fill their piggy bank is to send them down to a lower grade and teach them how to be helpful and help them to feel good about themselves and their own capacities, right? So that's that period.
Yeah. Our kids value the friendships that they make with the other kids, and it helps them to sometimes stay more focused in class because they want to be in that class with that person, and that person wants to be with them, so they understand like there's they build on that relationship. So
Thanks, Lindsay. All
Yeah.
right. Okie dokie. I'm seeing a lot of really good strategies. Book buddies, please, please, please explore this. Explore this. I want to show you this video. And if you don't mind, Heather, can you watch and make sure that it's working okay?
Yeah.
This talks about the brain, learning and relationships and the brain. And I just want to, one second. This talks about the brain model, and I'm going to let you watch this. Hold on one sec.
Every time
Whoa,
I
I'm
apply
sorry.
a liquid
didn't,
concealer, I feel like
thank
I've
you,
aged
lady.
myself by 10 years.
Okay.
One of the most rewarding experiences for me has been to study brain science and apply it to the experience of parenting. And the hand model of the brain that I use to teach parents is very useful to understand that. So if you take your thumb and put it in the middle of your palm, put your fingers over the top, this is a very useful model of the brain. And when we can actually see in front of us what's going on in the brain, then we can change what the brain does. So let me walk you through very basically what happens in this brain and the structures in it. And it goes like this. The spinal cord comes up, representing the wrist, and then you have coming up into the skull, the brain stem and the limbic area, which work together to help regulate arousal and your emotions and the way you have a fight, flight, freeze response. These are below the cortex, the limbic and brainstem areas, and the cortex is this higher part of the brain that allows us to perceive the outside world, to think and reason. And this frontmost part of the brain, right behind your forehead, so the person's oriented like this, is actually the part that regulates the subcortical, limbic, and brainstem areas. This regulation is very important because sometimes we can have all sorts of things happen in our life. We're tired, we're exhausted, someone pushes a particular emotional button, and we can flip our lids. So rather than being tuned in and connected and balanced and flexible, we can lose all of that flexibility, even lose moral reasoning, and act in ways that are terrifying to others, including our children. Now, you can actually bring yourself back online and come back to the high road and make a repair with your child. And that's important to explain to them. And you can also use this hand model of the brain to explain to children, even as young as 5 and 6, how to understand when their emotions are rising up from the brainstem and limbic areas here, and how it's overriding the prefrontal area and making it so they may be about to flip their lids. So I've had kids come tell me that they're about to go flip their lids and they need a break. They need a timeout. And by even just naming that, they can tame it. And that's the power of using the hand model for ourselves and our children to help us all make sense of what goes on in the emotional communication that we have in the course of day-to-day life.
Okay. So now this Dan Siegel. What I'm encouraging you to do, first of all, is to remember this model, and you're going to get the slides. And it's a wonderful thing to teach kids about this hand model so that they can begin to understand what happens when they lose control of their behaviors. And you can talk with them about it. I'm wondering if any of you have seen it before. Love the name it, tame it. I was like, okay. This relationship between your frontal regulator and the amygdala in the back and your emotional and what happens when kids flip their lids, right? And how we can help kids and ourselves, right, to self-regulate through this model. So I'm encouraging you to teach that to your students. Let me just get my, here it is. In case it's hard to remember. I have had the hardest time a few years ago trying to remember this. Okay, so right down here where it says the limbic regions, the hippocampus, the amygdala, right? That is what is unprotected and what drives us when we actually flip our lids, right? When we stop being able to self-regulate with this prefrontal cortex. Now, we also know as educators that this whole area, this prefrontal cortex, is the last part to develop in kids, right? So it doesn't fully develop to the age of 25. And so that's part of the reason that our kids have such a hard time self-regulating. Relationships, however, can be very soothing to this process. So connections, relationships, first of all, I'm going to start from the bottom of this list. When you have a relationship, when you have a positive feeling towards someone or something, your body releases oxytocin, which clears out the cortisol. Cortisol is the hormone or the substance, chemical substance that is responsible for the excitability, for feelings of anxiety, right? So oxytocin, which is the feeling of well-being that you get from relationships, calms and soothes and minimizes that cortisol, right? Connection, as I was saying, helps us to regulate when we flip our lids. All right. Positive relationships allow kids to feel more oxytocin, less cortisol, so that they can be calm and open to learning. All along the same lines. The connection reduces stress, creates a sense of security, confidence, able to take risks. So all of this is really emphasizing the importance that that we have strong relationships with our kids, that our students feel that regardless of how negative their behavior might be, that we have their backs and we approach them with a growth mindset and that we have confidence in their ability to change. So going to the next, I just want to talk about clarifying expectations. And I'm going to zip through this a little bit. It's a shorter section. Sometimes the reason that kids misbehave or don't follow the rules or interrupt learning is because they haven't internalized the expectations and they haven't bought into the expectations. And I'm sure that in most of your classrooms, your teachers probably have created classroom expectations with the students and they've signed them, and that's a wonderful start. Some other things are as follows. You always want to have visuals alongside these expectations that for kids, for non-reading kids, for ELL kids, for super young kids, you want to refer to the expectations often. You want to acknowledge when students are following through with classroom and school environment expectations. You want to make sure that those agreements and expectations include the thoughts of your students, right? You want to explain them. You want to explain the reasons for them and co-create them. You want to revisit them frequently and make sure that there's individual expectations as well as group expectations and reflect on them as a group. Community circles are really good for that. When kids are not meeting expectations, you want to identify alternative behaviors, different ways that they might behave that will fall within the commonly agreed upon expectations. And Laura's just writing here, buying into expectations in a high school setting is always a challenge. Absolutely. And I think it's because high school students, they need to have voice more than ever. They need to have voice in creating those expectations. They need to understand the reason for those expectations. And then as high school teachers and middle school teachers and adults, you need to really think about the whys of certain expectations. Because if it doesn't make sense to the kids, they're going to be, unless they're real people pleasers, they're not going to want to follow those expectations. So sometimes we need to sort through what we consider must-haves and have-tos and think about whether they really are have-tos. I want to talk a little about code switching. This is one way to talk about expectations with kids. So code switching refers to the different ways that we behave in different environments. For instance, let's talk, in my family, we had something called picnic rules. We had picnic rules versus dinner rules. Some nights we would have picnic rules, and that is exactly what it sounds like. We would have meals where we could wander, where we were sitting on the couch, where we didn't necessarily have to use utensils, right? Those were picnic rules. But if we went to a restaurant, right, your kids are going to code switch. There's a different set of expectations for different settings. So different code switching that kids have to do, for example, is they speak differently to their peers versus adults. They speak differently to parents and differently to teachers and paraprofessionals and all the adults that they interact with differently than they do with students and friends. Weekend speak is different than school speak, right? At home, they don't have to wait to go to the bathroom because there's plenty of bathrooms and there's not 25 kids in a room. All sorts of different code switching scenarios and just couching the different behavior expectations and agreements in that in taking off the moral imperative. Kids generally don't react well to moral imperatives, the rights and the wrongs, but talking about it in a sense of, well, this is how we do things at school, and there's a reason for that. And that's when we talk about code switching. Obviously, you're always going to avoid shaming language, again, moralizing. You should let them talk about their code switching, let them come up with examples and their expertise in code switching when you're coming up with norms. Okay, last but not least, we talk about repairing. In communities where kids feel safe and adults feel safe, right? We commit to responding to the challenges and the mistakes we made and reflecting on those experiences and repairing. And that's how kids and adults trust each other. I want to talk a little bit about escalation and triggering. And I want us all to consider for a moment the behaviors and activities that kids do that trigger us personally, based on our personal worldview, based on our parenting paradigms or our being parented, right? Past experience, socializations, prior traumas that we've had. Thinking about it in terms of kids too. Kids have past traumas. They have past socializations that will trigger them. And it is our obligation to be aware of those and to think before we respond about whether a student may have some prior experience or may have some identification or special need, right? That is triggering them. So it's about self-awareness, but then also having a trauma-infused lens where we understand that kids are not coming as blank slates to our school environment. At the bottom bullet just talks about that amygdala again, that place at the base of your brain where when you are triggered, you're going to fight, flight, or freeze. We're capable of going to fight, flight, or freeze, and so are kids. And when it happens, we cannot be reasoned with. There's no point, and we are not in control. So we can't hold it against kids when they do things like that. We can reflect with them afterwards, and we can help them to not have that happen again. This is just more on that fight, flight, or freeze. It cuts off your feeling brain from your thinking brain. And this is all language you can use with kids to help them with their behavior. We are flooded with that cortisol that gives us anxiety and causes us, again, to be stressed. We can't integrate information. So you can't try to correct a student's behavior when they're in fight, flight, or freeze. You shouldn't even try. They can't verbalize. They can't explain. They have to calm down first. They can't control their impulses. They can't remember. They can't apply themselves. They can't take emotional risks. All of that cannot happen. So when you see kids that are triggered, you know that until you can bring them back down, there's no reasoning. And what I want to talk about for a second here, and I think we're going to go just a couple minutes over, and I hope that's okay. I'll try to keep it to 20 minutes after. Students and adults bring in their self-concept. If I have a low self-concept, I'm not smart. I'm the dumbest in the room. I can't do this, right? I bring that in. A stressful incident happens. I'm triggered, okay? As the adult, I might be triggered. I have feelings about this, right? My feelings or the student's feelings will drive the next steps, right? They'll drive that behavior. Now, the student is going to behave negatively in that moment. As adults, we need to stop the escalation. Whatever we're feeling, we need to put a stopper in it and make sure that our next act is not in response to whatever we're feeling. And that is how we stop. And so the next time you're in a cycle, you see yourself getting into a cycle with a student, you need to pull back and put the stopper on it and really reflect on what's happening inside of you and articulate it. And afterwards, right, you can have a repair conversation after the event. So when we talk about responding as opposed to reacting, we're going to recognize our triggers. We're going to not take it personally. There are practically no children, I believe, on the earth that want to fail, do poorly, and screw up their education, right? It is not within their control if they're doing that, and that we need to teach them the skills to have that not happen. We can't take it personally. It's not about us. Always, it's not about us. We are going to model, we are going to talk, we're going to teach calming techniques, we're going to anticipate triggers for kids and for ourselves. And then forecast what's going to happen and mitigate against that. We are going to do all repair quietly and privately. And this even goes with your co-teachers, right? Never, ever, ever in public. We're going to give kids and adults space, time to cool down. We're going to ask them, we're going to validate, regardless of whether we agree, we're going to have them feel heard. Okay. And this last one is the talking less, listening more. Remember always that piggy bank and the relationship that you have, and draw on that and build it. When your student is calm, right, you can go back and have those repair conversations. You can reflect with them. You can talk about impact. You can address whatever harm has happened. This is a protocol called WOW that you can use verbatim to reflect and repair with a student or with an adult, right? You ask them, what's up? What happened? You listen to them. Okay, they tell you, what were you feeling? What were you thinking? What was the outcome that you wanted? Did you get that outcome? What could have gone differently? What was the impact of what you did? What was the impact of your actions, right? How can you repair? How can I repair, right? What skills do you need that you can practice? How can I help you? These are all questions in this WOW protocol. And again, you'll have these slides. Don't ever wow angry. Take notes when you wow so that you can have a record. Think about the feelings and the actions, link them. It's not about truth. It's about feelings and actions. It's not about right or wrong. It's about intent and impact. Model focus listening, rephrasing, validating what a student is saying, staying focused, right? What happened? What was the goal? And address the harm, right? Those are some of the, I'm going to keep going here because we're running out of time and we're going to close. Okay. I wanted to tell you, now I do want you to write in right now all of your questions and comments because I will go back and I will open up the chat and I will stay on after the webinar if you want to talk about anything in particular. I want to let you know that we have, Lindsay, I'm going to talk you, I'm going to stay on and I will unmute you. And I want to tell you that on March 5th, on February 6th, we have another webinar at 3:15. And on March 5th, we have another webinar. This webinar is going to be at 4. Everything is recorded. It will be posted on our YouTube channel, but you will also get a link and materials. And then in June, think about whether you might be able to convince your co-teachers or your principals to send you and your co-teacher to this co-teaching institute. Okay. There's going to be a survey at the end. When you get off, the survey will come up. Please give us your feedback. It would be wonderful. And I wanted to just let you know that this is the organization where we received our training. And there's this wonderful tool right here that I alluded to earlier. It's called the Ramapo Toolbox. And under each of these categories, it gives you some extra little strategies that you can use for each of the categories that we talked about. So the role modeling, the building relationships, the expectations and structures, and then adapting to some of this I didn't include, but the responding and repairing with the strategies like wow. Okay. So that is it for today. My contact information is right here. Feel free to reach out to me.